The boy wandered the riverside alone, never imagining his quiet steps would pull him into a moment that would change two lives forever. He noticed a trembling hand rising from the water, and in that instant he felt a fear so sharp it pushed him to act without hesitation. Her cries were fading. Yet the boy's courage grew stronger, as if something deep within him knew this moment was meant for him alone. But what he didn't know was that this was only the beginning of a story that would shock everyone. The woman's soaked clothes clung to her shaking body, but it was the terror in her eyes that told him she had almost given up hope. With each step into the cold water, he felt the weight of danger. Yet his heart insisted he could not leave her fighting alone. Her fingers slipped beneath the surface again, and the boy lunged forward, determined not to let the river steal her final breath. As he grabbed her arm tightly, the world around them grew silent, as if time paused to witness the bravery of a child with nothing. The river tried to pull her back, but the boy's small hands held on with a strength no one had ever expected from someone so young. For a moment she saw his face clearly, dirty, exhausted, yet filled with a fierce kindness that felt like a miracle rising from nowhere. His feet sank deeper into the mud. But he refused to release her, fighting both the water and his own fear with every breath he had. As he pulled her toward the shore, she felt something burning in her chest. An instinct telling her this child was no ordinary stranger. She didn't know his name nor his past. Yet something about him felt destined, as if saving her was the first page of a larger truth. With tiny feet splashing through the water, the boy rushed toward her, his heart louder than the river itself. He grabbed her trembling hand with all the strength he had, refusing to let go. And in that moment, two souls from two different worlds collided in a way that would change both of their lives forever. What the boy didn't know was that the woman he was pulling from death's grip wasn't just a stranger. She was a secret millionaire. And the choice she would make after this moment would shock everyone. The boy wandered along the muddy riverbank with quiet, tired steps. His tiny hands were cold, but he tried not to think about it. Life had taught him early that weakness brought no comfort. Every day he searched for anything the world had thrown away, bottles, wrappers, leftovers. But today felt different. Heavier somehow. The wind carried a sadness he couldn't name. Even the birds sounded like they were crying instead of singing. He paused at the water's edge, watching the ripples glow under the fading sun. This river was the only place that made him feel less invisible. Here, he wasn't judged for his torn clothes or empty pockets. He could listen to the water and pretend someone was talking back. Sometimes he imagined the river telling him stories about faraway places, places where children had beds, toys, and warm meals waiting, places where no one slept under broken roofs or hungry skies. He dipped his toes into the cool waves, letting the water wash off the day's dust. For a moment, he felt almost free. But freedom never lasted long in his world. A small sigh escaped his lips, soft and innocent. He wished someone would find him and say he mattered. He wished for a hand to hold just once, but wishes rarely came true for children like him. He lifted his head, staring at the horizon as if it held answers. And that's when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the river or the wind. A human cry, trembling, desperate. The boy froze, his heart thumping against his chest. The sound came again, weak and broken. Someone was in pain, real pain. He looked around, unsure where it came from. No one else was nearby. The riverbank was empty. But the cry didn't stop. It grew sharper, more urgent, slicing through the silence. Fear tugged at him, but compassion pushed harder. He stepped forward, scanning the water. That's when he saw her. An elderly woman struggling against the current, her hands clawing for anything to hold. Her face was pale with terror. Her body drifted lower with every second. She wasn't swimming, she was drowning. The river that comforted him was killing her. The boy didn't think twice. He sprinted toward her, splashing through the shallow edges. His heart pounded louder than the water. She gasped, her voice cracking in the cold air. Her eyes met his, full of fear, full of pleading. "Help, please!" her trembling lips whispered. He felt something inside him break. She needed him, and he couldn't turn away. Not when he knew all too well what it felt like to be abandoned. He stepped deeper, ready to do the impossible. The water rose to his knees, then to his thighs. He was just a child. But bravery doesn't measure size. The woman reached out with shaking arms, slipping under again. The boy lunged forward, grabbing her wrist with all the strength he had. Her skin was freezing. Her breath was fading. Their hands slipped once, twice, but he refused to let go. He dug his heels into the pebbles, fighting the current that tried to steal her away. Tears stung her eyes as she felt the tiny hands gripping her. "Don't leave me," she choked. "I won't," he whispered, voice trembling. The river pushed, but his courage pushed harder. His small arms shook, but he held on. The woman gasped as her head broke the surface again. He pulled with every ounce of strength left in his fragile body. Slowly, painfully, she inched closer to shore. Water splashed on his face, mixing with fear and determination. The woman coughed violently, struggling to breathe. "Please don't let go," she sobbed. "I won't," he repeated louder this time. Finally, the river surrendered. He tugged her onto the shallow edge where the water no longer stole her breath. She collapsed against him, sobbing in disbelief. He had saved her. A homeless boy who had nothing had just given her everything. The woman clung to him as if he were her lifeline. Her tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the river water. She couldn't speak at first. Her voice was lost behind terror. The boy gently patted her arm, unsure what else to do. He had never comforted someone before, but instinct made him gentle. Her body shook with shock and exhaustion. She kept staring at his tiny hands as though they held a miracle. "You saved me," she whispered at last. Her voice cracked on every syllable. She looked around, expecting someone, anyone, to appear. But the riverbank was still empty. Only the boy remained by her side. She couldn't understand how a child so small, so fragile, had such bravery. The sight of him broke her heart in a way the river never could. His clothes were dirty, his hair uncombed, his feet bare. He looked like life had given him nothing, yet he had given her a second chance. She wiped her tears, her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. The boy shrugged, shy and quiet. "You were scared," he murmured, "and no one came." Her heart cracked wide open at those words. In that moment, she realized he wasn't just saving her. He was saving pieces of himself he wished others had saved long ago. They sat together on the damp river bank, breathing hard. The woman watched him with a mix of awe and sorrow. He looked away shyly, unsure how to handle her gratitude. Silence hung between them. But it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken truths. She saw loneliness in his eyes, deep, aching, familiar. He saw kindness in hers, warm, rare, unexpected. Two strangers worlds apart, connected by a moment neither would forget. The woman reached out, brushing dirt from his cheek. He flinched slightly, unused to gentle touches. "Where are your parents, dear?" she asked softly. The boy looked down at the water, his reflection trembling. "I don't have any," he whispered. The words hit her harder than the river's current. Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to hug him, but held back, afraid to overwhelm him. He wrapped his arms around himself, suddenly shy. The woman felt something shift inside her, a promise forming. This child deserved more than the world had given him. He deserved safety, warmth, love, and she owed him her life. Their fates had collided at the river's edge. But destiny wasn't finished with them yet. What happened next would change everything. The woman tried to stand, but her legs trembled under her. The boy quickly stepped beside her, offering his tiny shoulder for support. She leaned on him gently, afraid she might crush him with her weight. But he held steady, determined to help her no matter what. The river dripped from their clothes as they moved away from the water. Each step felt like a victory after what they had survived. She watched him closely, amazed by his quiet strength. He didn't complain about the cold or the effort. He simply stayed by her side, guiding her to the grassy bank. "Are you okay?" he asked in a small voice. His concern made her chest tighten with emotion. They stopped under a tree where the shade softened the heat. The woman clutched her chest, still shaken. The boy looked around nervously, wondering if help would come. But there was no one, not a single person in sight. He realized she truly had no one but him. The thought made him stand a little taller. She reached for his hand again, squeezing it with gratitude. Her eyes glistened with tears she tried to hide. The river's roar faded behind them, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves. She breathed deeply, grounding herself in the moment. He sat beside her, unsure if he was allowed to leave, but he stayed because she looked like she needed him. And for the first time in a long time, he felt needed. A quiet bond formed between them, gentle, fragile, irreplaceable. As they rested, the woman studied him with growing concern. There was a sadness behind his smile, the kind only lonely children carried. His clothes were worn and stiff with dirt. His small feet were scratched from walking on rough ground. She wondered how long he had been living like this. He picked at the grass shyly, avoiding her eyes. People didn't usually look at him with kindness. He wasn't used to attention that didn't come with pity or fear. The woman softened her voice, wanting to understand him gently. "Where do you sleep, darling?" she asked. He hesitated, unsure if honesty was safe. But something about her made him trust. "Under the old bridge," he whispered. Her heart clenched painfully at his answer. She imagined the cold nights, the hunger, the danger, a child surviving alone in a world so cruel. He spoke about the stray dogs he shared scraps with, about the rain that sometimes soaked him awake at dawn, about how he kept a broken cardboard box as a pillow. The woman's tears returned, silent and unstoppable. He didn't understand why she cried. To him, this life was normal, the only life he had ever known. But to her, it was unthinkable. And she realized this meeting wasn't an accident. It was a calling. The woman wiped her face, trying to steady her breathing. She knew she would have to reveal something soon. The boy had saved her life, yet had no idea who she truly was. To him she looked like any frail old stranger in need of help. But behind her simple clothes and quiet presence, she carried a life built on wealth, legacy, and generational fortune. A fortune she never flaunted, choosing to live humbly. She preferred peace to luxury, silence to attention. But now, watching this small boy struggle to survive, her wealth felt heavier than ever before. She hesitated, wondering how to explain it to him. Would he treat her differently? Would he run away, thinking he wasn't worthy to stand beside her? She feared breaking the innocence of his kindness, for he had saved her without expecting anything in return. Without knowing she could give him everything he lacked. She looked at him, this brave little soul who had nothing but gave everything. Her throat tightened with the weight of her secret. She wanted him to see her as human, not money. But she also knew the truth could rewrite his entire life. She inhaled shakily, preparing to speak. But before she could say a word, the boy turned to her with wide, curious eyes. "Are you feeling better now?" he asked softly, and her heart melted all over again. The woman took his tiny hands into hers. They were cold, trembling slightly from the river's chill. She looked directly into his eyes, wanting him to feel her sincerity. "You saved my life," she began in a fragile voice. "No one has ever done something so selfless for me." The boy lowered his gaze, embarrassed. "I just didn't want you to drown," he murmured. "That makes you a hero," she whispered. He shook his head, not believing he was anything special. To him, kindness wasn't heroic. It was simply something people should do. The woman knew at that moment her life's path had shifted forever. She couldn't walk away from him. Not after what he had risked for her. Not after seeing the emptiness in his small brave heart. She squeezed his hands gently, making a silent vow. "I won't forget you," she said with emotion trembling in her voice. The boy blinked, surprised by her seriousness. People remembered him only long enough to ignore him again. But something in her tone felt different. Permanent. She brushed his hair back with tender fingers. "No matter what happens," she whispered, "I'm going to take care of you." The boy froze, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. Hope flickered faintly inside him, fragile, afraid, alive. The woman stood carefully, her wet clothes clinging to her. She reached into her pocket, hands shaking from more than cold. The boy watched her, confused, as she pulled out a small metal card. Her voice softened into a confession she had never made before. "I have something to tell you," she said. He tilted his head, waiting innocently. "I'm not just an old woman," she continued. "I'm wealthy. Very wealthy." The boy blinked, unsure what wealthy truly meant, but the seriousness in her tone made him nervous. She knelt down so she was eye level with him. "You saved a millionaire today," she whispered. The boy's eyes widened, stunned. He stepped back slightly, unsure if he had done something wrong. But she reached out quickly, guiding him back with gentle hands. "No, sweetheart. You did something incredible," she said. Tears returned to her eyes, warm and overflowing. "I want to change your life the way you changed mine." He stared at her, struggling to breathe under the weight of her words. No one had ever promised him anything. Not food, not safety, not love. And now this woman, whom he had saved without thinking, was offering him a future he didn't know he was allowed to dream of. The world shifted beneath his feet, and nothing would ever be the same again.